My name is Sydney Smith, and this case study is based on a case that I was the family advocate for back at the beginning of 2022. It is a case of child sexual abuse, and the client is Jane Doe. Jane Doe was a female who is 12 years old. She lived with her adopted mother and father, Tina and John, and her two half brothers, Jimmy and Tom. All three children share the same biological mother, and all of three children were adopted shortly after their births. Jane and her siblings were all born addicted to methamphetamines, and they are all members of the Choctaw Nation. The reason for the referral to this Child Advocacy Center was Jane made an outcry to her teacher that her older brother Tom had been exposing himself to her and had been forcing her to take drugs. And they have not received any services from the CAC in the past. Based on the initial assessment, Jane was a part of a forensic interview. During the interview, Jane made clear outcries that Tom had been exposing himself to her. She said that he had called her into his bedroom, and she didn't immediately go in. When she went in there, it appeared that he was masturbating, and she left immediately. This has happened twice. She said that both times it happened almost the exact same way. She also said that he has been forcing her to drink alcohol and to take drugs, and if she doesn't do it, he says he's going to hurt her. He has threatened to hurt her many times if she tells anybody what's happening. She also said during the interview that she thinks about hurting herself all of the time, but she didn't give any specific details. Tom, the perpetrator of the abuse, is a 16-year-old male. Tom was arrested last year for drugs and is currently on probation. He has been suspended 3 times this semester for fighting and having a vape on him at school. He has a history of being violent with his family, and he just started seeing a therapist as a part of his probation. During the forensic interview, Tina met with me, the social worker. I was serving as a family advocate for this case. During this interview, Tina said that the family was unaware of the sexual abuse that Jane had been going through. Tina said Jane was suspended for having a vape at school, but Jane said that Tom had forced her to take it so that he could have it at school. John, the husband, works nights and is gone 6 days a week. Tom has been caught drinking alcohol and does drugs actively. They currently have an open DFPS case based on Jane's outcry. The forensic interviewer recommended to me, the family advocate, that Jane be assessed immediately following the forensic interview for suicidal thoughts based on her comments. I conducted a safety assessment to determine if Jane needed immediate mental health intervention, as this assesses. This safety stands for Suicide Assessment, 5-step evaluation and triage, which asks if they have a plan, how often they have thoughts of suicide, and so on. Jane did not currently have a plan for suicide, so I assessed that it would be in her best interest to refer her for mental health services through the CAC. I then administered the TSCC mental health assessment screening, which stands for Trauma Checklist for Children. Some of the things that the screening asked about are thoughts of hurting themselves, do they feel safe at home, and it is broken apart by general trauma and sexual trauma. Some of the more concerning things that she said is that she is often worried that people want to have sex with her. She said she thinks about hurting herself often, but has not acted on the thought. And she said that she feels unsafe at home most of the time. The family dynamics. The interpersonal dynamics of Jane. Jane has ADHD and dyslexia, but does not currently take any medication for it. Tina said in the initial interview, while Jane was having her forensic interview, that Jane saw a therapist between the ages of 6 and 8 for behavioral issues and anger outbursts toward her parents. But Tina said that by the end of the therapy, she felt that she had improved greatly and hadn't needed it since then. Jane prefers to be alone and says she has no friends at school. She's being bullied currently because of her older brother and got into a fight the previous week with one of the bullies and was almost suspended. The family's interpersonal dynamics. All of the kids go to the same school currently. Both mom and dad work. Dad works nights while mom works at the kids' school. Mom has overseen the discipline for most of the child's life, but Tom no longer listens to her mom, causing the father to have to step in. Jimmy is the only one who has health issues as a result of the fetal exposure to the drugs that his biological mother took. The family issues. Jane's mother, Tina, wants Tom out of the house. Tom's phone was recently taken away for sending Tina pictures of his penis and repeatedly exposing himself to her. Tina said during our initial interview that there had been several instances where Tom had exposed himself on purpose to Tina, but she did not know that he had been doing it to Jane. John wants Tom to stay so that he can fix him because John feels that Tom will listen to him and he respects him. John will not let Tina kick him out of the house or find him somewhere else to go. Tom will only listen to his father, but John is not there at night when the incidents have been happening. There was a domestic violence incident between Tina and John 1 month after Tom was arrested the previous year for drugs. Tom and John had gotten into an argument and it was escalating and Tina tried to get in the middle of them. John got angry and pushed Tina to the ground and then he held her down. They did not call the police and it was not reported at the time, but Tina said afterwards she noticed that she had bruising on her arms and on her chest. Tom has held the younger brother, Jimmy, against the wall by his neck twice, and Tina has had to intervene and lock herself and Jimmy in the room to protect them. This was also not reported. All of these incidents have led Tina to believe that it would be safest for Tom to be out of the house, but John has insisted that that is not going to happen. Jane also said that she is very scared that Tom will hurt her now for telling about the different types of abuse that she has experienced. The intervention plan that I felt was best for this family. The first thing we did was make a safety plan with Jane. I brought her and her mother into my office and I gave them resources for what to do if Jane became suicidal or if she started having those thoughts, and the people that she could talk to and places that she could go if she started having those thoughts. I made a referral for counseling based on the results from the screening that we did, and it was determined that there was a spot available for her the next week to begin counseling. Jane, Tina, and Jimmy will be moving, Tina decided that they would be moving to protect Jane and Jimmy. She would also decided that she would be moving them to a new school district so that they would not have to go to school with Tom anymore. John agreed to pay part of the rent for a new home so that Tom could stay home and Tina, Jane, and Jimmy would be safe. Tina also agreed to attend parenting and healthy relationship classes. The evaluation of the intervention with Jane and the family. 3 months after the initial interview, Jane reported that she liked her new school and she feels much safer at her new home. She said she likes her new counselor and has been meeting with her twice a month for the past 3 months. She said she still sometimes thinks about hurting herself, but not as much. The counselor reported that they are pleased with her progress and she will be starting TFCBT, trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapy with her at the next session, which would also include Tina in parts of the therapy. The counselor felt that this would be the best course of action to help them all heal from their past traumas and to move forward in a much healthier place. Jane made it very clear that she does not want to see her father or stay with him since Tom is still there. Continuing with the evaluation of the interventions with the family, the charges against Tom were dropped because law enforcement felt that it was unclear if his motive for exposing himself was for sexual gratification And they also said that it would be hard to prove that he was doing it on purpose and that it was not just an accident. They also interviewed Tom, and he did say that it was an accident. John and Tina are currently divorcing. It has become a very difficult divorce, and John is fighting for full custody. Jimmy and Tina have both begun attending counseling, and they both say that they are enjoying it. Tina reports feeling anxious about being a single mother and has been fighting more with John due to issues with custody. Looking back at the case, I would definitely encourage Tina and Jimmy to start counseling sooner. The more that I spoke with Tina, the more she disclosed different types of abuse. There was a lot more domestic violence than even she realized in their past, and they had been living in such a violent and dangerous environment that both Tina and Jimmy were very traumatized from it. I should have focused a lot more on the domestic violence and asked her more questions initially, but at the time, it was my very first case, and I was more focused on the abuse that Jane had experienced and less on the entire picture. I definitely have learned a lot from this case, and moving forward from it, I learned to look more at the family as a unit and not just the child who was being interviewed. After the initial interview, Jimmy started having a lot of issues at school. He started fighting. He started touching girls inappropriately. He started having a lot of very similar behaviors to his brother. He also came in a few weeks after Jane's interview because he had started telling his counselor that his brother and sister had started having sex together, that they were sneaking off into the bathroom. This was found to not be true because they were not going to school at that time. I also found out at that interview that Jimmy is very, very racist, and his forensic interview was Hispanic. And he was very, very rude to her, which I had to fight my biases with that and really pay attention and just focus on helping the family because he was very, very unnecessarily rude to one of my colleagues when we were just there to help him. He refused to speak to her in the forensic interview. He wouldn't look at her. He was just very, very rude and short with her for just because she was Hispanic. And he said some very inappropriate things for being as young as he is to her. So that was definitely something that I had to learn to accept and look at it, is that he is a very traumatized child who has been through a lot and has heard a lot of awful things from his older brother. So just focusing on keeping him healthy and getting him in counseling really helped me move past